This is What's Up. I'm Animesh.
And I'm Peter.
And we're a day late than our usual upload time because we wanted to give ourselves at least 24 hours to listen to The Sick, The Dying, and The Dead, Megadeth's 16th studio album. Yes, it was released Friday, 2nd September 2022. And today on Horns Up, we are bringing you our thoughts after having spun the album over the last 24 hours.
So wait, basically we've become a reaction podcast. Is that it, Animesh?
Yup, absolutely. But in all honesty, who fucking cares? It's still our podcast, and which is why we aren't alone. Joining us once again from Singapore, here's Ravi.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, Ravi. Are we meeting you, the real you, in your
In my mystic way of life.
way of life?
I don't know.
Alrighty.
Not mystic.
Okay.
I was getting some cross connections from Sadhguru or whatever.
Alrighty. Let's get some context. Guys, are we Megadeth fans?
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the last Megadeth album you guys heard before The Sick, The Dying, and The Dead?
I heard the last one, Dystopia.
Oh,
and
really?
I think and I think the lack of enthusiasm in my voice should like explain it.
Okay, cool. Ravi?
Yeah, I heard Dystopia end to end maybe one time, and I liked the way it started off. And then, it was almost like the air being let out of a balloon, and it just kept getting more and more mediocre as it went along. And after I was done with the album, I had absolutely no interest or desire in hearing it again. And, pretty much after Euthanasia, I've been a very sporadic kind of Megadeth fan. I've just been diving into the occasional album. And, the problem is before each album, Dave always talks up the fact that this is now going to be like this return to roots, and it's going to, have some really fast and heavy bangers and stuff like that. And then you listen to the album, and it's mostly more in the plodding and mid-paced kind of space quite frequently. The last album by them that I really liked end to end was United Abominations.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Had that entire vibe of a refresh. You had, I think, the Brodericks playing on it, and it just sounded amazing, right out the gate. And while, of course, not a patch on the first four albums, which are absolutely in the Hall of Greats as far as I'm concerned. It was an extremely respectable album. I think the next one was 13.
No, Endgame. You're missing out Endgame.
Yeah, so I think Endgame and 13 just kind of doubled down on the guitar flashiness aspect, which was good, but the songwriting was not, as strong as it had been on UA. And then, of course, Super Collider was a complete disaster. I just heard the first song and decided I didn't want to hear the rest of the album. And then, Dystopia, like I said, marginal enthusiasm. And now, of course, we have The Sick, The Dying, and The Dead.
Okay. As for me, I like the last chronologically released Megadeth album that I've heard was probably United Abominations. I haven't heard Endgame. I haven't heard 13. I haven't heard Super Collider. I haven't heard Dystopia.
Even the singles?
Yeah, I mean, the singles maybe off and on, but if I ever felt the need to listen to Megadeth, it was always either Peace Cells, which remains to date my favorite Megadeth album, Rust in Peace, and occasionally Euthanasia, Countdown. Hell, I've even heard Risk in entirety.
Yeah, I think I remember you mentioning this. But
rather than these post-2000 Megadeth albums as such.
But I have to bring this up, right? And this came up when we did the entire, it was again, three of us talking about the Iron Maiden, right? Release. Do you feel that with a band like Megadeth, right? At this point, because you've got such a great first five albums, at this point, just the name itself is kind of getting in there. At this point, I'll tell you honestly, right? I felt a little bit of anticipation for The Sick, The Dying, and The Dead because I was like, fuck, it's been a while. What is it really going to sound like, right? So was the curiosity. And because it's been 6 years, I kind of forgotten what Like while you guys were just talking about it, I was like, fuck, they have actually released a few duds, or quite a few duds. But do you think that, like, if it wasn't Megadeth, like if it was just packaged as another band, because let's be honest, like with the whole retro thrash and all of that coming in, everyone's just basically riffing off or like milking off what Megadeth did in the early days, right? Would do you think that, like, just because it's a Megadeth album, that's why it's being
Of
kind of put
course,
in that category?
it's MegaDave, it's Dave Mustaine. The fact that he's releasing music still, the fact that this is the 16th studio album, and because of the brand name of Megadeth attached to it, that's the reason why anybody's listening to this album. The same album being released by an unknown band would get even less than half the traction. Will probably get 1/10 of the traction that this album would get.
I'd
Yeah.
actually offer up a bit of a counterpoint there. I'd say the problem with Megadeth is that those first four albums, the first six, if you want to be a little generous and include Countdown and Euthanasia, both albums I don't care much for. But the first four albums were just so fantastic, so outsized in every single department, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from the artwork, you could say that the So Far So Good So What artwork was not all that great, but it vibed so well with the foreboding tone that that entire album had. I think Mustaine was at the top of his game in terms of lyrics. The kind of fluidity that the compositions had was off the charts. Like if you listen to So Far So Good So What, there's very few songs that adhere to the verse chorus format on that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's almost like they were bringing into existence music that had not ever been heard before.
Yep.
And now, of course, they're retreading familiar ground. I honestly think that because of the overhang of those four albums, it makes, and how absolutely fantastic they were, it makes every single new album they put out have to work so much
really hard. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Take it seriously as a Megadeth offering. Whereas if this had been, I don't know, Evil or somebody like that, I'd have been like, oh, fuck, Evil have, really put out a fantastic thrash albums. It has a few mid-paced songs, but it's mostly really fast and energetic, and I really like this. What a great album. So I would have actually probably, been a little more forgiving in my evaluation of it had it been a less storied band. Having said that, of course, we'll get into the particulars of the album.
That's the story of any legacy band as such, right? How many of us truly remember the riffs from Slayer's last album, or Judas Priest's last album, or AC/DC's last album, or Iron Maiden's last album? Well, actually,
AC/DC,
Iron Maiden's, yes.
Iron Maiden, I actually remember.
Even
because I liked
AC/DC,
both those
the last album wasn't bad, actually. It was a really good album. It's the symbol of why these bands are considered legacy bands, right? They've got so much history that every new album just has so many huge, just has such a huge shoe to fill or to even feel comfortable in. Doesn't have to be a great shoe, but even just to get that basic comfort that a shoe needs, fuck, I want shoes.
That's actually a fairly good metaphor.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean,
and they extended it really well without losing track. I mean, mad props to that.
But I want to say one thing, right? I mean, like if you're running with that shoe analogy, you
do run with a shoe analogy.
Running with that shoe analogy, man,
I see what you did there.
Unintentional. I feel like sometimes also when you look at just like what their recent output is, I mean, should we just dive straight into the singles bit, or at least the anticipation?
Okay, so what were you expecting from Megadeth's 16th studio album?
Nothing. So I think like for me, my expectations were kind of like zero. Like I'm like, let's not have any expectations of this album and like let's be surprised. And then you had that first single that come. Did I know you avoided it? Ravi, you heard the single?
Oh yeah, I'm following every one of the singles as they drop. Yeah.
And that kind of like my first thought was like, fuck, like he's back in a way, because just like from the opening riffs itself, right? Like you kind of heard that itself. And I think that what I have to kind of credit Megadeth for this album, right, is they've got like a fucking great marketing team behind them on this album. Like, music aside, I want to just appreciate just the way they've kind of gone putting out the singles, the whole anticipation, the hype. I mean, like, dude, I was on Twitter once and Megadeth did a fucking Twitter Spaces. I was like, what is happening? Like, MegaDave is on Twitter Spaces. Like, this is blowing my mind. And then few weeks later down the line, he's on Joe Rogan podcast. I was like, whoever's thinking has really thought this throughout the entire way. I mean, he's also figured out which are the right places to get Dave Mustaine's face, right? Would you agree? What do you think, Ravi?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think Animesh pointed out the sort of trap of the legacy band really well. But I think what's fantastic about Mustaine as a person, he has many unpleasant aspects to his personality, but I think his work ethic is probably, I can't think of anybody other than Iron Maiden who have that level of work ethic. And I think Megadeth do a lot more than even Iron Maiden do. I mean, they don't have the stats, but this is just my surmise, based purely on the number of times I've been within arm's reach of a Megadeth gig. And I think with each album, Dave Mustaine, I think, gets into it thinking, okay, this is finally going to be the album that is going to drive the stake through Metallica's heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you have that as a motivation, it just makes you so absolutely obsessed with every single aspect, not just the music, but just the entire surround of putting it out there in the most, relevant and intriguing and interesting way possible. I think the second reason why he probably hit so many kind of the blocks on marketing, got so much right on it, was the fact that this came against the backdrop of the long-standing members being ousted under circumstances that left, let's say, a lot of the fan base divided, in the sense that the younger fans were like, oh, this is great, and this is, demonstrates a commitment to behavior that cannot be allowed to go unchecked. And the older fans, who I think are old enough to be, and probably may even be, the fathers of the younger fans, were like, what was the big deal? So given the fact that there was so much turmoil in the lead up to this, and I'm not even getting into the pandemic and all of that, I think he really felt the need to kind of put himself out there and,
Exactly. He had a story. To tell, especially given the fact that the guy beat cancer, man. I mean, that itself makes him, itself makes him a huge deal just to talk to. All of that context gives excellent just story and, dare I say it, content ideas to anybody who's willing to market and get some interest into an already supremely interesting guy. Find me one metalhead who doesn't want to just have a chat with Dave Mustaine. I bet you that's impossible.
Yeah. And this is again my marketing kind of mind kicking in. It's like you can kind of just like put shine to something that's not great, but then you have something like Dave Mustaine's story, and there's so many different points, right? I was watching one of his interviews. Ravi, I didn't watch the entire Joe Rogan thing. I didn't see
to sit through that completely. Also, I think Joe Rogan was completely taking the piss out of poor Dave as well.
Yeah. But I saw a couple of clips from that. I feel also at this point, like, Dave Mustaine feels vulnerable enough to like talk about the struggles and stuff like that, like, because he's kind of just been through this entire journey in the last few years. And this is just pandemic aside, right? Like I was watching an interview last night where he was just talking about like how the guys didn't know what they were going to do. Like they had already started writing the album, right? And where it's going to go next. And he was like in that poor shape, but he was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to kind of like beat this. So just that, I think that entire thing, like you've got that entire thing to one up Metallica always. Then you've got this. It's kind of like giving him a drive that's, I don't know, unbeatable at this point that I can think of. Like I can't compare this to any other legacy act, at least.
That kind of story. Ozzy is releasing a new album, or has it already released? I'm really
it's
not
still
sure,
on.
but yeah, like Dave Mustaine and his contribution, and just the kind of a guy he is, on the level of an Ozzy, definitely, I would say. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
At least to my ears, Mustaine's making it, like he has the chops to really make interesting songs. Having said that, let's finally talk the sick, the dying, and the dead. Um, Peter had no expectations from the album. Ravi, did you have any expectations?
I had negative expectations. I mean, after Dystopia, I was like, if this is something that doesn't bore me, I'll think it's a huge win.
Interesting. Having gone in with those expectations, first time you guys spun the record in entirety, what did you guys think?
Considering I had no expectations, it exceeded, man. I was just like, and the thing is,
it's easy to exceed expectations if you have that.
Yeah. No, but I'm saying like, I heard the singles. So it's just that it's strange now that I've heard the singles and then seeing the placement of the tracks, right? Like the first single is the last track on the album. And I was like, what the fuck? Like that didn't make sense. But then when you think about it, it makes sense because no one's kind of going to go right to the end. So it's great to kind of get those as the singles in there. But I enjoyed it, man. I mean, like to be honest, heard other than the singles, the album only once. I'm definitely going to go back listening to it this weekend for sure. Like that's what I would say. Ravi?
Yeah, with me, I actually liked the singles enough to order the special edition record of the Megadeth side. I thought each of the singles was like better than its predecessor. I absolutely liked Soldier On. I think as a commercial Megadeth track goes, it is probably the best commercial Megadeth track I've ever heard. I mean, I'd actually pick listening to Soldier On any day over listening to Atul the Mon or something like that. You know, it had a real kind of almost, I mean, this is a word that I'd hardly ever associate with Megadeth, almost a kind of jauntiness to it.
I agree.
This entire, you know what, I've reached a stage where I know that I can kind of kick almost everything that life throws at me. And here's a song about that. And it was probably one of their happiest and most uplifting sounding songs. And I think that was the vibe that they were going for in Super Collider. But that album was, of course, a disaster. But I think they've kind of got that right with this particular track. It's probably one of the most positive sounding things to have ever emerged from the Megadeth stable. As for the rest of the album, I mean, I think the singles are the singles for a reason. They're quite clearly the best tracks on the album. Apart from that, I really liked Sacrifice, which had some incredible guitar lead. Celebutant was, pretty fun, and it's got, I think, Elektra Mustaine giving slightly sarcastic backing vocals in some parts. And Dogs of Chernobyl was absolutely amazing. I have a feeling if there's a fifth single, that'll probably be it. I think they have 4 out so far. Yeah, the rest of the songs you could kind of take or leave. Mission to Mars, I'm extremely conflicted about. It actually sounds more like alt rock. I mean, it sounds like it sounds in parts like the punk pop kind of stuff.
It sounds like the opening of a really good concept album.
Purely to my ears, it sounded like, I don't know, something that a heavied up version of Blink 182 may have done. You know, there was something very, very oddball about it. And I think I'm going to have to give the track a few more listens to really make my mind up about it. But the one thing I'm bummed about is the fact that they have this, at least to my mind, really boring story-led outro to it when they could have
Yeah.
just slapped down a few more guitar solos, which would have been amazing.
Well, my first listen to it was on a commute, and I wasn't feeling it. The quality is definitely up there, but I just felt like it was more of the same. None of the songs really like stood out except for bits and parts here and there until Soldier On came on. And then from Soldier On onwards till the end of the album, the transformation there in just terms of the energy level and the vibe is excellent. The second, that latter half, the bottom half of the album is superb. I really, really, really enjoyed it. But then I think this is because of the circumstances and the reality of me listening to it. Because later on, when I heard it through headphones, everything just landed much, much, much better. And then I tried doing this a couple of times where I did the headphones experience or just speakers at home or office experience versus the commute experience. And this is the first time in a long time that an album by Megadeth isn't like in my mind now, this is not a driving album, which is so weird, right? Because I'm expecting thrash metal to just accompany me and be my soundtrack to the road. But this doesn't do that. And I'm trying to figure out why. I don't really have an answer for it. That's definitely one experience as such that I'm missing out on from The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. However, having said that, on headphones or when you're listening to it solo, it sounds pretty good. Like the songs that definitely stood out to me, Dogs of Chernobyl was awesome. I think my favorite song on it is actually Celibatant. It's so fun. It's so fun, and I didn't mind Mission to Mars. I didn't like Killing Time or Junkie all that much.
Those were complete filler.
Also, there's such a nice mix of different eras of Megadeth. You have the album opens with The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead, which kind of already starts with a euthanasia, countdown to extinction vibe, and then goes into really, really amps up the heavy metal and the thrash metal qualities with Life in Hell and Night Stalkers.
That's one of their most interesting opening tracks.
Yeah, it's almost like Dave wanted to put the entire context of his legacy in one track.
Exactly. I would go so far as to say this is probably the most interesting opening track they've done on an album after Holy Was the Punishment Due. Because, it goes to many, many places you don't expect it. Yeah, it starts off with the Bring Out the Dead bit. Then you have the bells tolling. Then you have a riff that sounds suspiciously like Hell's Bells by Easy. And then, of course, it kind of builds into something.
Correct. Hell's Bells. Correct.
Suddenly have him segueing into the creepy, Ringa Ringa Roses bit, which, if they'd been, I don't know, I think, which was albatrossy, for want of a better word. Though I'm quite confident that it wasn't a direct source of inspiration. If it was, well, wow, mad props to Dave Mustaine for having expanded his taste. Yeah, but I mean, it was such a good opening track. It literally never allowed you to get bored or let your interest flag even a little bit, all the way fairly long run time.
Yeah, and that kind of a vibe that not boring. Say runs on all the way till even like almost through the entire album. Like the first track that I really got bored on, and I still get bored on, is Killing Time. But
basically that's Psychopath, Killing Time.
I think that middle part, right? Junkie. I don't know why Psychopathy is a separate song. Like it just continues. They just I don't know.
Zone Patrol vibes. No, but then of course now that he didn't have the bassist.
No, I'm saying like this is like one way to get extra Spotify money or whatever. Right?
Probably, probably.
But like I have to say, like for me, Life in Hell, Night Stalkers. Then you've kind of already heard it. I don't know about you guys, but like I think I've said this before on the chat when we've spoken. Like I didn't really care. Like it didn't really add value when you had like Ice-T come in. Like
I loved Ice-T's cameo, man. Like
yeah, I didn't really.
it
I mean,
was so well done. Like took the energy level, really bumped it up. Perfect hype man kind of duties. I'm half envisioning like in this war field, you suddenly have a hype man coming in, and yeah, what's that? There's this one lovely line that he says, "Game's over, bitches."
okay, okay. So I can understand because it's a very WWE thing or wrestling thing.
It's not
I know.
it's taking
It's an icy thing, dude.
it's an
it
icy thing, yeah.
yeah.
It's so what would have really like irked our ears was if there was an attempt at doing maybe rap or something of that sort
Oh,
on the
please.
song, but it's not. And
Yeah.
it's just like
Narration,
it fits that vibe
Yeah.
so well. So well. So much attitude, so much angst. Oh fuck. That was awesome.
I was looking up the writing credits, right, and trying to see. So it's no surprise, Mustaine, and then there's Kiko. But on the only track which has someone else's, a non-band member, is Dogs of Chernobyl. Do you want to guess who kind of contributed to that?
No, who?
It's Dave Mustaine's radiologist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if you when I thought about it, right, and like if you think about the entire album, just from the vibes, the artwork, and everything, you're thinking like war and stuff like that, right? But apparently, Dogs of Chernobyl is not about war. It's a
Yeah,
love
it's about
song.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's even these liner notes kind of things on Apple Music, I think, which is
Okay.
being shared around in a number of places. I think, including the Genius lyric sheet. It's actually quite interesting if you think about Dogs of Chernobyl. Essentially, it's, I think, one of Dave's first attempts at kind of getting metaphoric. I think,
yeah.
considering the fact that radiation therapy is also used to treat cancer, it's, I think,
Mhm.
his fears of being abandoned, either dying due to the radiation therapy, which of course, there's lots of people who survive the cancer but can't survive the therapy, right? Because chemotherapy weakens you like nobody's business, and there's a whole bunch of people who've been cured of the cancer, but their immune systems have taken such a toll they never come out of it. So I think in that sense, Dogs of Chernobyl is his attempt at kind of addressing his fear of radiation therapy and the fact
Absolutely.
that it could
Yeah.
essentially leave him
Yeah.
completely isolated.
If you really want to be a dick about Dogs of Chernobyl, you have to just read the lyrics without any context and then try and play a guessing game as to whose face Dave Mustaine is talking about. I see your face wherever I turn. There's blood on my lips as my eyes start to burn.
Oh yeah, I
You
mean, the
vanished and
lyrics are-
left me behind like one of the dogs of Chernobyl. Where did you go?
Yeah,
Wow.
the lyrics were actually, fairly brutal by Megadeth standards. I think towards the end, it kind of gets, well, not exactly Cannibal Corpse-y, but fairly violent and graphic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the doctor contributed the part where a couple of phrases he says, and also some information about the radiation poisoning where
Oh,
everyone got sick at Chernobyl. And I thought that was like when you put all of that into context, and now the way you're talking about it, I'm like, it makes you rethink that casual listen that you've had of the song, right? Like, you
Exactly.
wanna-
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
you know what? Hearing you guys, I'm actually liking the album a lot more because I think just talking the ideas that have gone into it through help appreciate them a little bit more. I think
Yeah.
what we have here is Dave Mustaine getting almost into a kind of Alice Cooper-esque zone. I mean, I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with Alice Cooper's discography. I'm like the hugest Alice Cooper fan I know. But
Mhm.
Alice Cooper does a lot of songs where he inhabits characters. Essentially, every song is almost like a short story. And I think Dave is trying that approach as he gets older, kind of realizes that he doesn't have it in him to just sing angsty songs anymore. Of course, a lot of the songs are angsty, and I think a lot of them do circle back to his personal obsessions about being betrayed and things like that.
Yeah.
But I also think with songs like Celebutants and a couple of others in there, I think even Sacrifice, he's genuinely trying his hand at kind of storytelling and
That's a
patience.
side of Megadeth, or that's a sign of Dave Mustaine that we've seen before. He's always had that knack of just putting out fun songs in the middle of nowhere on an album. Fight for Freedom, if you guys remember that, or even Good Morning Black Friday, Wake Up Dead.
Yeah, Wake Up
That
Dead.
wasn't a light-hearted song, dude. That
Dude,
was
Wake Up Dead is I mean, it's probably one of the most metal songs ever, but it's fucking funny.
But here's the thing, right?
Or
Like,
even Victory, for that matter. Do you guys remember
yeah,
Victory?
Victory was just cheese, dude.
Victory was, yeah. I wouldn't ever expect a Metallica or a Testament or an Anthrax, okay, maybe an Anthrax,
Maybe
to
Anthrax.
write Celibatant, right?
but
Yeah, definitely not Testament. I mean,
yeah.
I think if anybody went to Chuck Billy with the Libertad lyrics, he'd probably tear them limb from limb or something.
Yeah.
I thought this entire album's like going to be like a concept album of sorts
Mhm.
in there, and like with the whole war thing, and then you had Soldier on, and then back to back you had, and just the imagery. At some point, I was just like, "Fuck, do I want to like listen to something like this grim or like especially like I think which one was it where they had the black? I think it was Soldier On or the second single. Sorry, Soldier On was the second one. We'll Be Back was the first, where you kind of it goes through the entire video goes through the PTSD of someone who's been in the war and stuff like that. And I was like, fuck, like, is this the right time to kind of release an album like this? But then if you see the way the album is, right, it's not really, it's the way Ravi's describing it. It's kind of just like these shorter stories in there. And that's what I was wondering is, does tracks like, say, your Junkie, Killing Time, kind of fit in the entire scheme of like an album, I would say,
I
if you
think
think about it.
Yankee is the Yankee song he's written about Chris Paul and but a lot of the times when Dave writes about somebody who's a compulsive liar, one suspects he's also. I mean, the songs have a kind of autobiographical content.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I'd like to believe that the entire album is extremely cathartic.
Yeah, with the facts of his life quite often. So
Yeah. I'd like to believe that. And I really don't know because I haven't listened to any of the interviews or the Joe Rogan thing. But does anybody ask him how cathartic has this album been? Because I genuinely think that after all the shit he's gone through and after all the good stuff he's gone through over the last 6 years, I do think that a lot of his lyrics on The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead are very personal, all stem from something that he's experienced.
Oh, quite possibly. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I wish we kind of get him for an interview, though. I think since we just accused him of being a compulsive liar,
it's like, you fuckers, no way. Hey, listen, he's available on Cameo. Just saying, we could go that route.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So, lyrics and songs, they kind of seem to be working. What did you guys think about the guitar work on this album?
Oh, I thought it was really good. I mean,
Yeah, same.
This, I think the Kiko bits really stand out. Oh, wait, before that, can we just talk about the new drummer, Dirk? How do you pronounce that last name?
Verbunen, maybe.
Not taking a stab at it. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So I think the addition of Dirk has definitely kind of brought something to the sound in the sense that there's just so much more of a focus on the rolls and the fills, and there are many parts where the music kind of cuts and all you can hear are the drums. And I think Dirk has. I mean, of course, this would require a significant kind of a psychological shift within Mustaine, which I doubt he's capable of doing. But I think what really revitalized Sepultura over the last couple of albums was the fact that Eloy was their youngest member, and was practically bursting with lots of really good ideas. It's an immensely talented drummer. had a huge role to play in songwriting, and I think
Hmm.
that revitalized the band. So I think Dirk plus Kiko plus Mustaine have the chance to do that. But for that, he have to kind of let go of the reins just a bit. I don't know if what Mustaine's headspace is, but I think if the next album is even more collaborative than this one has been, chances are, you'd have a genuinely revitalized Megadeth with maybe an album that can go toe to toe with the classic discography. I don't know. I have a feeling, given how his attitude towards the band and towards relinquishing control has been thus far, I'm not holding
Hmm.
my breath for it to happen. But I definitely think that the new lineup has definitely added a certain degree of zing to the album. It's definitely a lot more energetic sounding than Dystopia was.
Even though I haven't heard the previous Megadeth like releases or like ever since United Abominations, the feeling that I get after listening to The Sick, The Dying and the Dead is that Dirk and Kiko aren't being seen by Mustaine as just session musicians
Yeah, yeah.
or members who've been hired to help him play these songs on tour. Kiko does a lovely job of documenting a lot of stuff on his through his YouTube channel,
Yeah.
and those recordings and that footage certainly paints a proper band vibe rather than Mehu Mustaine and you guys have to play this in this way, otherwise you're out of the band.
I'll be honest, right? And I think I know for sure Ravi, since he enjoys power metal. I was really excited when Kiko joined Megadeth, right? Because I've been listening to Angra for a while.
Oh, yeah, amazing.
One of the few power metal bands I really enjoy. That's the thing, right? Like, and I love that there's this aspect of Megadeth also, right? I mean, I think now is the right time to kind of talk about me watching Megadeth in 2012, right? At that time, it
Uh-huh.
seemed like, hey, this is the Dave Mustaine show. You guys just kind of play along or whatever, right? And you've always seen Mustaine, at least in the last few albums, always get these guys to kind of play along and stuff like that. I mean, Chris Adler was in the band briefly in there, but I don't know how much like creative input he had in there, right? But with like guys like Dirk, Kiko, it's a far more cohesive thing. And I think it's also like we were talking about, right, in the start, just like the journey that Dave Mustaine has been through in recent years. I think it's him also like letting the reins go a bit because life is short, let's be honest, right?
Hmm. That's an interesting way to look at it. I hope it's something that that has driven this kind of cohesiveness, but it's Mustaine. We're really never sure as to what it is. He probably, for all you know, he probably challenged Kiko to play some solo, and Kiko performed. And Mustaine's like, "Okay, cool. You're a much better guitar player than I am. I'll still write some insanely weird rhythm parts for you to solo over." And Kiko managed to solo over that as well. Like that's one of the real strong highlights of this album for me is the solo work, and Kiko is wow.
Yeah,
Is the first
yeah.
time in a really long time, maybe ever since the Marty Friedman days, where the secondary or where the lead guitarist of the band is outperforming Mustaine so heavily when it comes to solo work. But then again, Mustaine's rhythms are what really one of my biggest wishes ever. I would love to hear James Hetfield and Mustaine do a proper collab because damn, like both of them just seem like perfect foils to play against one another or play with each other. It would be a proper like Toki Wartooth and fuck, I'm forgetting the main Squizcar Squiggle. Proper envisioning of that of Death Clock coming to life. Um,
Only
okay,
on Horns Up do we reference fictitious bands along with real ones.
okay. Is there something that doesn't
Yeah, but
work
then
for you
Mustaine
guys?
and Hetfield is a fictitious band, so
Yeah, absolutely,
fair
absolutely.
point.
Yeah, it is. Is there something that doesn't work for you on this album?
I think a few of the songs, like I mentioned, are obvious fillers. I think. Oh, by the way, did you guys hear the? I mean, you must have heard the version that was out on YouTube and the streaming services, right?
No, I haven't.
Oh, so that's called the digital bonus track edition, and it's called
Okay. Yeah. The one with the two covers in it,
yeah.
right?
So there's Police Truck by the
Dead
Dead
Kennedys.
Kennedys.
and that I didn't care much for. I thought was okay. And then there's the
I actually
Sammy
enjoyed that
Hagar.
quite a bit. I enjoyed both the covers actually.
The Sammy
Really?
Hagar cover
Yeah.
was just so amazing. It was like the most fun Sammy Hagar, Dave Mustaine, everyone involved in that project ever
The
had.
worst, I wouldn't, I would have just gone out and covered it straight up without involving Sammy Hagar on it if
Oh,
I
but-
was Dave Mustaine.
Yeah, but I love the fact that he's involved, and I mean, he's still,
Yeah, it kind of has his blessings, etc., whatever. And that vocal style didn't really gel with Mustaine's. That's my
Yeah,
only critique about it. But it's such a
but-
fun song.
yeah,
But wait.
it's amazing. It's just so buoyant again. I mean, it's
Exactly. Yeah.
such a happy kind of. I mean, of course, the name of the song is, I think, the world
The
is
world's on
ending.
fire.
World's on fire, something like that.
Burn in
Yeah.
hell.
Yeah, but it again paradoxically sounds so upbeat and I don't know.
So
Uh,
wait, hang on. If this is
Cheerful
what
in a
we
goofy 80s action thriller kind of way.
Hmm.
So wait, if this is what we get on Spotify and Apple Music, Ravi, the edition that you bought from the Megadeth website, like how many more?
So
Editions.
the edition on the Megadeth website actually does not have
The covers they instead has some old
it doesn't have the
live
covers.
recordings or old songs or something,
it
no?
basically has a single version of We'll Be Back, and it's got the Conjuring live.
Ooh,
So-
nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
And considering the fact that it was a song that he said he'd never play,
Yeah, right. That's
you know,
yeah, that's
I
a
was
bit
like,
of a
oh, hey.
statement.
may as well get this when it's going, and who knows when he's going to pull the plug on this song again. So yeah.
And you can at least flip it for good money in a few years.
Yeah, there's that. So
Alrighty.
so this Planet's on Fire, Burn in Hell. I think that's an amazing freaking cover. It completely kicks ass.
My biggest grouse with the album is not surprisingly Mustaine's vocals, which don't get me wrong, they sound really good, but the spoken word thing that he does, where he's trying to be the old Mustaine, the snarly, sniveling, hello me,
Yeah.
it's the real me, Mustaine. वो attitude नहीं आता है अब.
Kind of belatedly trying to find his singing voice.
Yeah, right?
Kind of done more experiments with the entire singing delivery. So
Mhm.
initially, what I think he was trying to do, especially on albums like A World Needs a Hero, was he was trying to sing in that sneery way, which,
Yeah.
at least to my ears, sounded horrible. Over here, there are certain songs where he seems to really work very, very hard on the melodies, like, for instance, Soldier On.
Yeah.
There are other tracks where it falls flat on its face, like Sacrifice, where, the guitar solos are the saving grace of that song. Yeah, I mean, I think he's trying to find some different way of expressing himself.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
entire
I think he's realized that, okay, this is the voice I have. Let me, exactly in your words, let me find the best use of it or the best way to keep using it.
Yeah, that again actually is one of the things that Alice Cooper does amazingly well. I mean, Alice Cooper has, if you just listen to it as a voice, a very, very limited kind of voice.
Yes, it's not a huge range as such.
Yeah, but the theatrics, the dynamics he brings to that voice, his ability to use it to kind of inhabit characters, not in as over the top a way as, say, a King Diamond does, but in a very everyman kind of way, is what makes Cooper a genius, in my opinion. And I think Mustaine is a huge friend of Alice Cooper's, and I think he's acknowledged him as being an inspiration, and maybe this is his attempt at trying to kind of get into that space as he gets older.
Alrighty,
Well,
cool.
While this is the studio version of it, right? Like I'm waiting to see what eventually happens live, right? Because I don't think like it'll be a little too much to expect the same thing live in there, especially just like with my one-off experience that I had with Megadeth. Like I wouldn't be
Yeah, but I mean, let me put it this way: nobody ever showed up at a Megadeth show saying, "Man, I'm here for the singing." You
Oh
know.
yeah, 100%, 100%. Let's be honest about that.
Okay, cool. So now that we're talking live, most Megadeth set lists ever since in the 2000s era have had a huge mix of the first four albums and then maybe a couple of songs from whichever album the tour cycle is for. Do you think that changes with the tours or with the gigs that the band will be playing to support this particular release? Do you see the legacy songs as such taking a bit of a sideshow to feature more songs from this album?
No, no chance. Like the
Uh,
reason why they will have Megadeth is to play that, like period. Like whether it's a festival or whatever, like it'll be like that whole scenario with Deep Purple, right? Like you can't show up to a Deep Purple gig and expect them not to play Smoke on Water, right? No matter how much they hate the song. So I think it's going to be that thing.
Oh, no, no, no.
All,
I'm not saying that they'll never play like a Holy
ah,
Wars or they'll drop Peace Cells to feature the one of the songs here. I'm just saying I would calculate the ratio of legacy songs to new songs from an album at like maybe a 70-30 ratio at the moment, where 70% is legacy songs. Would you shift that to say 50-50 or even a 60-40 kind of a split to feature more of these new songs?
I'd anticipate it being a 60-40 because, you now have, I think, two albums worth of Kiko material. You have a lot of albums worth of Chris Broderick material, which I'm assuming will never be played live until Chris Broderick somehow finds his way
Returns to
back.
the band. Yeah.
At which point he'll be the best guitarist they've ever had, etc., etc.
Again.
Again. But, I think with so many of those songs completely taken off the table, what you effectively have is maybe the Friedman era, a couple of bits and bobs from the albums that Al Petrelli did. Was it only one album or was it two albums?
I think it's
Maybe
only
a couple.
one. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it was The World Needs a Hero and which was the other one. Anyway, so the Al Petrelli era, for want of a better word. And I think even that era, considering the fact that it ended not so well, is probably something that Mustaine would not want to revisit. So I think it'll be skewed towards the first four and then now the last two. The way the album is structured, I think The Sick, the Dead, and the Dying could potentially be the album they kind of start the show with, because you get a chance to play the Bring Out the Dead tape and the bells while you just get on stage, and then you start off with this really energetic kind of song. And I think We'll Be Back is a very, very good song to kind of end a set with just before the encore, because
We'll be back.
ties
Yeah.
into the
Yeah, we'll be
never
back.
joke on the encore as well. So I think those two songs are definitely going to be there. I have a feeling Soldier On
For sure.
will make it, mainly because it's got a good sing along kind of chorus, and I'm
Yeah.
assuming the crowd will do the heavy lifting, even if Dave's not up for it night
Yeah.
after night.
I think Night Stalkers will be on it as well.
So
So
I
So the
think,
damn, that's
singles,
already like 4 to 5 songs.
and then of course there's the Dystopia title card, which I think has been on the sets for a while, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. So so like I said, I expect at least it to be a 60-40, 50 split,
Hmm.
with these last two albums being represented quite significantly.
Alrighty. Final questions. Is it a worthy addition to the discography? And can you introduce somebody to the band with this album? Or rather, should you be introducing somebody to the band with this album?
Why don't you go first, Animesh?
Okay. Worthy addition to the discography, yes. This is listener bias because Megadeth to me will forever remain Peace Cells, Rust in Peace, that era of the band. So there's no way the album ever compares to that, just because of the amount of time I've invested in those
Yeah.
albums, and also because of just how impeccable those two albums are. But will I listen to The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead more than how much I listen to, say, a Euthanasia or a Countdown or a Cryptic Writings? Yeah, maybe, probably. It's the first Megadeth album in a long time that I'm actually interested in listening to on repeat for at least the very short foreseeable future. It's not making me go back and revisit older albums as much as the system has failed, or I don't know, like,
Oh,
yeah,
system
did.
has failed. Oh my God.
No, because I've only heard till United Abominations, I really can't comment about Endgame 13, Super Collider, and Dystopia. But from what I've read, it's not something that I'm missing out on,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? So, but with this album, I think there is a new lease of life as such
Yeah.
in Megadeth. And will I be introducing someone to the band with this album? Probably not. If they want to watch cool videos rather than listen to songs, or watch cool videos as a way of listening to the songs, then maybe,
I
because
mean,
this album definitely has that going for it in the terms of the singles.
I would say just look at the artwork and all of that, right? Like that's the shiny new toy that you kind of show someone that, hey, check out this. Because like that's one of the things I feel.
Oh, speaking of artwork, I absolutely hate the font. The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead has been that's been used to
I think they
utilize
were
that.
trying to go for a
Very, very,
cinematic
very,
movie,
very, very.
but it looks
Uh,
really bad.
yeah,
Yeah.
like just give it to a better art director, guys.
Yeah. But I'm saying in terms of like the problem also when we spoke about this with the Grammy situation and stuff like that, right, Animesh, a few months ago, is like with a lot of these legacy bands, they've not like kind of kept up with the times or like what you kind of introduce and what's there. And this is also coming back to the whole marketing bit, right? You've got the videos, you've got stuff that will get people's attention. So from that perspective, I think accessibility wise, this is a great way to kind of say, hey, check out this. If you're now interested in this, then you can kind of go down that Megadeth rabbit hole because you've at least got this, right? Or you've at least resonated or this connects with you. Then you can kind of go down. And the 16 albums, you'll find one or two that you'll be like, what the fuck is this? But there are at least those first 4-5 that you'll be like, wow, ऐसा भी बजाते थे क्या? कैसे करते हैं? Like that kind of thing, if you know what I mean, right?
No, I completely get what you're saying. I actually think that introducing somebody to Megadeth, I mean, not that I ever foresee doing this myself, this album would actually be quite an interesting sort of way to get them into the band because it's a good representation of what they do best. And then if you kind of work your way back to the time when they used to do that same thing so much better, that's a bit of a wow factor. I'd actually say that, you made a point about the videos. I actually like the older videos a lot more than I like the new ones. I think the Tornado of Souls video is, the benchmark for Megadeth's videos. And that's like absolutely fantastic. The aliens and Megadeth playing and all of that. I mean, that's like one of my favorite Megadeth videos. This cinematic stuff I can take or leave. But I actually think it's interesting mainly because what would I'd imagine, I mean, of course, there's my bias speaking here, but what I'd imagine would happen is if you introduce somebody to maybe Rust in Peace or So Far So Good or Peace Cells, I'm assuming that the perception of the qualitative drop in the band will be so great that somebody may not give the later albums a chance at all. And so in that sense, it makes more sense, but this is a gateway drug where you have a certain nostalgic fondness for this album, while at the same time acknowledging that the albums that came before it were, a whole lot better. It's kind of like how I feel about Iron Maiden having been introduced to the band with No Prayer for the Dying, which is definitely not one of the absolute top albums by Iron Maiden, but it's a huge nostalgic favorite.
Well said. Well said. So that sums up Horns Up stands as such, or reaction to The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. What are your thoughts on TST DATD? Haha.
It's such a
Try saying
mouthful.
that. That's a mouthful.
Mouthful.
Let us know. We are at honsupod.com or on Twitter at honsupod. As always, I'm on Twitter at Asmoani.
I'm a trend crusher.
Now I'm at home.
Yay. I was waiting for you to say that. This has been Horns Up.
Horns up, guys.
Horns up.